Hey, thanks for being with us on Elevate Your Wealth. Brad Johansen, Casey Elkins, Mark Stimson, Elevated Financial Management. It is always good to be back with you guys.
It's great to see you, Brad. We're happy to be here.
We're thrilled that we get a chance to help educate you on this thing called retirement, trying to figure out the answers to the questions. We're only going to ask one question today. Well, maybe that's not quite true. We're going to ask a question starting with the same word today, and then we'll continue on those questions because, guys, we have a lot of questions about when. Because when we get to this retirement, and I started again, when we get to this retirement thing, we say, you know what, I haven't done this before, but I know now I'm ready to do it. And we've kind of said this in previous shows. Some people will walk into your office and go, I just retired yesterday, so when can I do this kind of thing? We don't really plan a whole lot when we get to this. We just know when it's time. So when is going to be our key word today? And I want you guys to help me answer some of the questions on when today. When should I start taking Social Security benefits? Man, this is a good one. Because here's the premise on this. Dudes, Social Security is not secure. So when I hit 62, I'm taking my money because they ain't going to be there. So I'll phrase the question again. When should I start taking Social Security benefits?
I want to address this one because this is probably the number one question that we get in our office that needs to be understood. And that's, you mentioned it, Brad. There are a lot of people today, because of what's gone on in government, the talk about basically the fund running out in basically 2033. So we got, 8 years or so left. And they think, well, that means the end of Social Security. People don't understand. Social Security, it doesn't, the main check that comes doesn't come out of that fund each and every week for a person, right? Or each month, depending on when you get your check, which Wednesday each month. But the point is, it does matter, and I don't believe for 1 second, and we're nationally certified Social Security advisors in our office, and we study this stuff, we get education, continuing education on it. I just went through the class again. I got that certification about 8 years ago. I just did it again, and this is something I want our viewers to truly think about and understand. It's not going away, so if you're thinking, I'm going to turn 62, I better do it right now, I truly believe for the bulk of our clients that come see us, that's probably going to be a mistake. Now, it may be that you need to do that. We got to look at so many other factors. What is your health history like right now? Maybe your family's history. Do I need that money to live, to pay basic necessities? That's going to change everything for us, right? Some people, that's why we need a lot more information to make a blanket statement like this, because for the bulk of our clients, we're going to try and show them how they're going to be able to at least get to 66 or 67, depending on the year they were born, that's going to make the most sense, because Casey mentioned earlier, we don't want them to take a 25 to 30% haircut for the rest of their life, because if over even a 10 or 15, 20-year period of time, that adds up to several $100,000, and it matters.
Case, is it fair to say that couples fail to do this together often? They're doing it in a silo when it should be a strategy?
Yeah, that's absolutely the case, and oftentimes, it's really interesting, right? We have people that come into the office, and sometimes it's like husband and wife have never talked about their finances. Nonetheless, when the husband starts Social Security versus the wife and how that impacts one another, and a lot of times what we see is a really emotional decision driven by a news feed or media outlet of some kind that Social Security is not going to be there. And we believe Social Security will be there. I think it's going to look different. I think it has to look different than it does today. But they're not going to just completely get rid of Social Security. That would be, one, political suicide for whoever did that, and two, that's the majority of quite a number of people in America. It's the majority of their income. And so that program as a whole is not going to disappear, but it will look different in the future. But it's something where that's where planning comes in. And it's the most interesting thing with the financial world. For some reason, everybody is looking for the one-size-fits-all solution. Well, start it as early as you can, or save $1 million, or do this or do that. And that's this blanket statement that's supposed to fit everybody. And what we find is that those blanket statements don't fit anybody. You have got to custom tailor this to your individual circumstance. And for you, it might be the best thing to start Social Security at age 62, depending on your circumstance. For you, that could absolutely be the worst thing, but it's something that you don't know until you have the conversation and you run the numbers along with all the other pieces to the puzzle. We cannot make Social Security decisions in a silo, as you said, not only within the marriage, but just in terms of the broader retirement picture. It has got to be a cumulative picture so that we know how all these pieces work together.
I want to add one very important point here, because when you decide to go is going to affect. What people don't understand is there's sometimes a tremendous difference between a spousal benefit and a survivor benefit. And they think possibly if I wait till 70, my wife will get my 70 number when she decides to start. Well, that's not the case. She will only get half of the full retirement number, even if he or she waited till age 70. But when it comes to that surviving benefit, I want to highlight waiting couldn't be a bigger benefit to that survivor, right? Because they're going to get bumped up to that higher amount, right? The one thing that happens, it's still a widow's penalty with Social Security, because they might be bumped up. But remember, they were living on two Social Securities prior to that first death. Now one has gone away. So there is going to be a reduction in income, and that doesn't get talked about like it should. And we highlight that in our office.
It is a strategy you have to use. I'm going to go out of order here, so I'm warning you. Because I think this becomes the next when that everyone wants to know. When should I consider retiring? And my goodness, this is a wide open question.
Yeah, there really is no one-size-fits-all on that, right? It's never too early to start talking about it and start putting a plan in place.
Is that more an emotional question again, or is it a financial question?
I think really it's more of an emotional question. It is, because it's about what you want your life to look like. You've probably heard of the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early, right? And for a lot of people, that's their goal. We have a couple where the wife retired at 50, and that's great, and she's doing well, and that's exciting, right? We have other folks that are choosing to work into their 70s, and notice the word I used, choosing to work into their 70s, because they enjoy what they're doing and they're happy to do it, and it's emotionally gratifying, and they have an impact, right? So it's individual, and it has to be individual. Everybody thinks 65 is just the magic number. I hit 65, I'm going to retire, and that's it. And you know what? That's a great placeholder, but is that the right path for you? Is that the correct path for your individual circumstance and what you want out of your life? And only you can answer that question.
I would like to add to, you ask, well, is it about the money or is it about emotion? I think there's some of both, right? Because if you're younger and you haven't saved enough, well, that makes that answer pretty easy, right? You're not going to be able to retire early, right? Going to have to keep working. But as Casey mentioned, it's about the life, what you want to do in retirement that for us that really matters. It takes a certain amount of money to do certain things. We all know that, right? But with a plan, we can help them figure so many things out. I think housing is a big one. Where do you want to live? What are you going to do in retirement? We had a client not too long ago. She got retired, and within 2 weeks, she came back in, and she was a little bit discouraged because she didn't realize how much of her life was tied up in her work associations, right? And people don't think about that. And so she's having to develop a whole new network from a social standpoint, friends. She's got family, but a lot of her social activities and in retirement was tied to those that she worked with. And that was a big eye-opener for her. After a couple of weeks, she realized, I don't have this figured out. And she was talking about not wanting to be retired and trying to go back to work. So again, that it doesn't happen all the time like that, but it's something, if you don't ever think or plan for this, it can end up being a real problem. And we want our clients to not have to learn that way.
The number on your screen is there for a complimentary financial review, 844-342-7142. I want to offer something else, though, and I want to put this up on the screen for you as well, because this is the book that we will give away. Break breaktheglassbook.com. Scan the QR code. I'm going to leave this up for a second here because everything within this helps to kind of paint the picture. How do we put the dominoes together? How do we do it in the right way? Maybe, and I started this saying we're just going to ask questions of when. When do I know enough to figure out how I can do it my way? It's all in here. Breaktheglassbook.com. Scan the QR code. Take the time for yourself. We'll send the shipping. We'll get it to you. We'll allow you to read, and we want you to come in to say, now maybe I can. Now maybe I could use some help. Scan the QR code. We'll be right back.
The big box firms, I think a lot of the folks that work there are really good people, and I think that they really want to have a positive impact on their clients, which is commendable. But what I really wanted to make sure was that nobody dictated to me what could be provided to my clients.
We do true emotional planning and true retirement planning, knowing that you're retiring from a company you've worked for 30 or 40 years. Now you're retiring. We want them to retire to something else.
It's very, very important that at Elevated Financial Management, the people that dictate what investments we use and how we structure investment plans are me and Mark. That's it.
When they come in, they're getting a service and they're getting things set up for them that these big box stores can't even come close to doing.
We know the market is going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks took.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, what is that anyway?
This was the fourth worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and written financial plan.
Grateful for your time. Thanks for being with us. Elevate Your Wealth. Brad Johansen with Casey and Mark, and we're talking when. You want to know, so let's answer some of the wins. Guys, I want to get to medical care because for a lot of us, this is a concern. It should be a concern. I want to give you a statistic that is increasing. It's over 70%. We're at about 73% of people now healthy at age 65 who at some point are going to need long-term care. So I ask, when should I start planning for long-term care?
This is important to me. This is why I'm in this business today, because my grandfather on my dad's side got Alzheimer's and went into a facility in his early 90s, lived about six and a half years, and I watched him lose everything that they had from a liquid asset point of view. We kept the big farm back in Iowa, but the point was they went through close to $700,000 cash. So for me, this is something we want every...
In 6 years, $700,000?
Yeah. When we have clients right now in Seattle that are a single person, we're pushing $15,000 a month. So add that up. What is that, $180,000 for one person for 1 year? So if there's going to be something that's going to blow up a good plan that we put together, it's going to be this. Now, Washington State, what is it? Has it been 2 years now, probably?
Yeah, I think
they
so.
had a little bit of a money grab. They highlighted the need for long-term care, so they came up with this plan. Everybody was going to have to participate if you hadn't opted out. And the plan was not portable. It had a total of $36,000 benefit, which in our book wouldn't even cover but 2 months now.
Yeah.
So it was a joke in essence, right? So this needs to be talked about. Now, should everybody do it? We don't know. It depends on your situation, because we've got clients that could self-insure, but we like to share with them, is that the most efficient thing to do? And it isn't always. Self-insuring for me, I tend to not like that. I think there's better, more efficient ways to actually possibly spend a lot less money if it does happen than to do that, because there's some hybrid life insurance policies out there today where that money will all come back to the estate if it's not used for long-term care benefit. So again, there's some really good ways to so-called skin the cat now, and we want to talk about that with every client.
Yeah, we do. We do talk about it with every client because, Mark, you mentioned a family story, and my family has the exact opposite circumstance. where grandma and grandpa did plan for long-term care and they were well taken care of in that circumstance. And so you do have an option, right? You do get to choose.
Yeah.
And here's the reality: if you don't put in place a long-term care plan, the state has one for you, the government has one for you, and you're not going to like it, right? And that's it. It's Medicaid, and it's not enjoyable. It's not what anybody wants. But if we don't do the right type of planning and take care of the assets, not only can it have a negative impact on what our future looks like, but it's also very unloving to the spouse and to those that we leave behind, because we've seen circumstances where there's not long-term care, but that long-term care, when it's needed, is so expensive that now the other spouse, who is still healthy and should be out living their lives or trying to enjoy it as best as they can, is now strapped for cash because all the assets are going to pay for the long-term care of the other spouse. And those types of things can be accounted for, they can be planned for. And so you asked the question, when should we be planning for long-term care? And the short answer is yesterday. This is a plan that we need to get in place as soon as we can.
I love what Casey said. We have this up, and we did this in the first segment. It is there for you to scan the QR code. This is the book, breaktheglassbook.com. You can go to the website, scan the QR code. How much is that going to cost me? Absolutely nothing. We'll send it out to you for free, because part of this long-term care is one of the pieces of the puzzle that is in the book. Scan the QR code to do that. I love what you said, is that we do have options, and that if you don't create a plan, somebody else has a plan for you. Let's put the plan together. I want to go to the next question, which is usually, when can I start? I suppose I should phrase it. When should I start withdrawing money from my retirement accounts?
You know, that question is really answered based on all the other things inside of your
Within the
retirement plan.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, it's not a one-size-fits-all as is most things in retirement. If you have a pension, if you've got good Social Security, how old are you? What types of assets do you have? What are the tax status of those assets? How much income do you want? All of those things factor into when you can start or when you should start taking money out of your retirement accounts. Now, that all being said, if we are pushing up against a required minimum distribution, or we're getting to the point where required minimum distribution is on the horizon, we may choose to start doing Roth conversion, taking those dollars out, paying the taxes on them at today's rate. So the tax efficiency behind that question is very important as well. And it's the same as anything else in retirement. The decision can't be made in a silo. We have to look at the broader picture to determine what the right thing is in your individual circumstance. Because the right thing for me isn't the right thing for Mark, and it isn't the right thing for you, Brad, and it's not the right thing for other clients. We've got to figure this out on a one-on-one basis.
And I think this is important to really talk about. We're talking about, Social Security, tax planning. When you really think about this, when should I do certain things, right? Well, think about this. When we poll at our classes, we'll poll, would you go to Social Security first, pull that first, or would you go to your 401k? And I will just tell you, 90% of the time, the hands that go up, they're going to go to Social Security first, because they put a different emotional attachment to the 401k money versus Social Security. And that it couldn't be farther from the truth, because here's the point I want to make. If we leave the Social Security go, we know, you mentioned it, Brad, they get an 8% growth on that money. It's guaranteed, right? Their 401k accounts, that's not the case. It could grow up 8 or more, but it could also lose money. So I try and help them, we try and help them to see, why not think about hitting the 401k up first, where we know our Social Security is growing, pay tax at the lowest rate they're going to see in their lifetime based on, we know where our government debt is at right now. And you just see the eyes open up like nobody's ever shared that with them. And that can be such a good move to make. But again, we need all the information before we can have them think about that possible strategy, that they were never going to go down that road if they hadn't learned about it.
I'll say it again. If you don't have a plan, the government has a plan for you. Medicare, Medicaid, they all have a plan for you. People will try to figure out how to deal with you if you don't deal with the understanding that you have to have all of these things in place, and it won't look like anybody else's plan. I don't care what anyone has told you, including an advisor that you may have right now. Don't worry about this. We'll deal with that later. If you're not hearing anything other than what we're saying today, it's you need to start now on a plan for yourself. To make a call, 844-342-7142. When are you going to do that? How about now? We'll be right back.
They've got quite an extensive resume. Wow, so many years of management. Bet that was fun. So this job requires basic knowledge of the social media and video platforms, content creation, and SEO. How proficient are you in those areas?
Going back to work after retiring is not ideal. I'm Casey Elkins of Elevated Financial Management. If you have amassed a nest egg, it's time for a financial advisor to help you reach your retirement goals. We're in one of the greatest tax windows in history, so it makes sense to take advantage of this tax discount while you can with your partners in retirement. Our expert advisors and tax specialists are fiduciaries that specialize in retirement planning, tax mitigation, estate planning, and so much more. Plan your retirement right. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and tax analysis.
Hey, glad you're with us on Elevate Your Wealth. I'll put this back up for you because I know you want free stuff that's actually going to help you retire. BreakTheGlassBook.com. Scan the QR code. We'll send it out to you for free. We'll ship it to you for free. You let us know when and where we should send it, and we'll answer the question when. We'll do it now. Okay, let me get to another couple questions, if I can, before we end this. When should I change the risk level in my portfolio?
You know, that's a really good question. It is, because it's a question that a lot of people don't ask themselves. And I hope that people hear that and they start to ask themselves that. Oftentimes people, the only time that retirees think about that is when they're on the cusp of retirement. I'm retiring next week, I'm retiring next month, and so now I've got to change my risk level. That really can be a recipe for disaster, because what if during that time frame when we should have been asking, should I be lowering my risk now, for the 5 years before retirement, what if the market has a downturn in that time frame? Well, that potentially delays when you can retire. Mm-hmm. If you take $1 million portfolio and it loses, let's say, 30% to the market, there's $300,000 gone that you no longer get to live on in retirement, and you have to build those assets back up. And part of the way you build them back up is by continuing to take the risk. So now it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy, and we're stuck on the hamster wheel because we didn't plan the right way. Mm-hmm. And so when should I start lessening the risk in my portfolio? If you're 5 to 10 years from retirement, that's when it's time to have this conversation. And you've got to review not only the risk that you're taking and the risk that you can stomach, but how much risk does the plan actually allow me to take and still be successful?
If you're saying 5 to 10 years, for most of you watching, it's like now. I need to start at least asking the question. Do you want to jump in on this before I go next?
I just want to echo what Casey said. This is an issue that I just don't believe gets talked enough by the big box store firms. It's always about, they're always in growth mode, right? And right now, we had a study that Fidelity put out early in January that said 7 smart money moves for 2026. And number 6 on that list was boosting guaranteed income. Okay, that's coming from one of the largest custodians in the world. Everybody's heard of Fidelity, know who they are. Probably custodian over $5 trillion. It's a lot. Let's just put it that way. But the point is, they're coming out and saying, you need to, depending on your age and where we are in the planning process, it needs to determine what you should be doing. That means reanalyzing or looking at the risks that you're taking to do certain things at certain times in our life. And we are dedicated to making sure that that's one of the first things we do with the client. We analyze where they're at and help them to see. How many times have we had a client said, nobody's ever taken the time to show us this before, ever, right? So again, we believe it's critical to doing true planning.
All right, I want to get to one more. And this is what I sometimes say is the tail that wags the dog, because we don't, why do I care about this now? I don't really have an estate, so I got a house, I got a car, I got some land. Okay, yeah, you do. You have some, whatever you have. So I go to, when should I start estate planning?
You know, we do have in Washington State, I will say this, that if your estate's under 100,000, it's very, very simple. We would tell that to a client. In fact, they can do a lot of it actually without a will. If they've set up their accounts at the bank, TOD or POD, you can actually write out a simple piece of paper and have that notarized that what you want to do with your house.
Yeah.
And it could go directly without any probate. But that's not the case for most people where we live, or for the ones that work with us,
Yes.
right? And if you don't have a plan, you're going to get one, like Casey's mentioned. You know, if you don't have at least a will, it's going to be a problem, because all a will is like a roadmap through probate, right? Hopefully, you're going to be giving the assets to who you've designed them to go to. The state may not look at that the same way that you did, and they're going to do it based on their, succession of beneficiaries. So again, and you may need a trust, but again, there's so much to all of this. You have to have a discussion before we're going to know what exactly needs to be done and when.
And so many people will think, well, I'll be gone, so it doesn't matter, right? We hear people say that, and maybe you don't say it out loud, but maybe you think it a little bit. And the reality is that doesn't change how hard they work to have the assets that they have. Yeah. That work is done, and if that's the case, then let's find the best way that we can pass those assets so that your family, during an emotionally stressful time, is not now financially stressed trying to figure out what it is that you wanted to be done.
Yeah.
We get to it again. If you don't have a plan, somebody's got one for you, and that includes your estate. We talked about the book. Hopefully you scanned that, and then you're going to want to make the phone call to 844-342-7142. Why? Because you need a plan. And you want somebody who's done it hundreds, thousands of times to be able to have their perspective to say, when should I do this? When should I do that? When should I start? Use an expert to say, how can I help? Put together a retirement that's going to last until your last breath. When should you start? 844-342-7142. Thanks for spending time with us. See you in the office, right? And right back here next time on Elevate Your Wealth.